Welcome to the Gumption Podcast, hosted by seasoned commercial real estate developer and co-founder of Gumption, Ward Neely. Every episode, he interviews commercial real estate veterans on the cutting edge of the industry for their story, insights, and wisdom. Today, we're joined by seasoned Birmingham-based CRE broker and developer Will Akin. Will is a principal at Capital Growth Real Estate, and in this episode, he's going to share his CRE journey with us. Enjoy.
We're going to get started. Will Akin is a longtime friend. We've known each other for a long time. I grew up with his brother. I guess technically my first job in real estate was at the shopping center group. You interviewed me for that job. I accepted the job, and I think before I started, you had left and moved on to your next venture. But really excited for Will to kind of share some of his expertise, kind of the evolution of his career in real estate, and just get to know him a little bit better and hopefully learn something. So, let's start with just kind of how you got into real estate, what drew you to it, or, maybe you're just like me and you just kind of fell into it and got stuck here.
Yeah, Ward, thanks for having me. This isn't really what I do well, but I'm going to try my best and relax and just be laid back like you and have a conversation. So I grew up, I guess, born kind of like an 80-year-old man, real mature for my age. Wasn't really into much of kid things. I always wanted to work and make money. Started doing yards at 7 or 8 years old, and had a lawn business, and remember pushing my lawnmower with all my equipment on top of it because I didn't have a car, and washing cars and everything I could do to make a dollar. So did that all through high school. Went to college. I was fortunate that I was the oldest of 4 kids, and so my dad asked me when I was going to college how much money I needed per month, and this was in 1999. And so I told him, and I think it was $1,250 a month, which was a lot of money back then for a college kid. And I had roommates, and so I went into college and was fortunate to have that paid for, and a blessing for sure, and didn't really have to work. So I was able to focus on my school, and although the first couple of years I did more partying than I did studying. But I knew, grew up in a household with a dad that worked for a big company and had to travel all over the country and had a very high pressure job. Made good money and gave us everything we needed, but he was gone a lot, and he's a great dad, still is, but he was gone a lot, and I didn't want to. First off, my personality, I don't do well working for other people, and I'm wired more as an entrepreneur, and I wanted to be able to make money based on my performance, not on what a company thought I should make. And I wanted to build a cash flow machine so that I didn't have to work forever. And that when I had a family, I could spend time with my wife and kids and try to be able to do something bigger than just make money, and try to give back. And so, starting at a young age, liking to be in business, make money. In college, I decided I wanted to go into real estate. I studied finance and real estate and economics. Interned for Phil Mulkey, who's a local multifamily developer, after freshman year of college, and then met Gary Fayro and Greg Hess, the shopping center group, when they came to speak to a real estate class at Alabama when I was there, and interned for them after my junior year. They refused to give me a draw of $24,000, $2,000 a month out of college, because they've never paid anybody at the shopping center group at that point, and they weren't willing to pay me that, even though I was going to pay them back with interest. So I went into property and casualty insurance for $30,000 a year. I did that from June to April. I called Greg Hess and said, "Hey, I hate insurance. I'm basically just getting hoarded out by people and quoting, and they're just using an older person. And can I come back?" And he said, "Yeah, we're overwhelmed. It's April of 2004, and we're blowing and going, and we need help." And so I called my dad and said, "Hey, can I borrow, up to $24,000, $2,000 a month, pay back with interest?" And he said, "Sure, happy to do that." So I let my wife know I'd quit my job. She was a special ed teacher at Hoover, making $30,000 a year. And so stopped working and went to work for them and for Gary Farrow, Greg, and Hugo Isom, and was just lucky to have a great place to go and start doing deals. And so that's kind of how I got into it.
It's funny. I guess as long as I've known you, I didn't know that was the start. Like I knew they came and spoke at University of Alabama, and that's how you guys got connected. But I didn't realize that they wouldn't give you a draw and you went somewhere else, because mine was similar. It took me a while after school to figure out, really that I needed to be a job and not a bum. But I met Greg through my dad, and then we kind of hit it off, and he's like, yeah, come work for us. And I was like, what are you going to pay me? He's like, nothing. Like you gotta make your own money. I was like, what? I've got a degree. You got to pay me something. He's like, no. So then I took a job. Well, actually I tried to start a business, try to do a startup home health care business that, kind of paid some bills, but not really. We were undercapitalized and didn't really know what we were doing.
Some things never change.
Yeah. Yeah. So then after like a year, I go back to Greg and I was like, hey, like, can I come work for you? He said, yeah. And I was like, what are you going to pay me? He's like, nothing's changed. And so then I took a job selling, like corporate accounts with Sprint cell phones, and I hated it. I sucked at it. And after like a year, I'd gotten married at that point. And after like a year, I was like, I can't do this. And my wife, similar situation. She was a teacher, high school geometry teacher. Great with shapes, really bad with numbers. And then I finally went back to Greg and I was like, man, just give me something. He's like, I'll give you $1,000 a month. That's at the time, that was 2009, and things had kind of really started to bottom out. But I think more than anything else, so many people had left the business. And so his accounts were starting to pick up and he could use some help. And that's when I came on with him. So it's similar stories, but then we also come from, we've talked about the family tree of real estate. Gary learned under Jeffrey Bayer, and then Gary's trained so many people in Alabama real estate. You and your brother and Alan Hawkins and Greg. Trying to think who else. I mean, there's just a tree of people that have been very successful, and I think the project side and the finance side is always a big accomplishment. But I know if you ask Gary what he's most proud of, it's all the people's career paths that he's changed their trajectory. And so I think it's pretty cool to see that. But it's also nice to be able to, interact with people, even though you and I didn't work there at the same time. We were taught real estate in the same way. We see it the same way, which is why we've partnered on a deal, and we've looked at plenty of deals together. So, all right. So you started the shopping center group. You're a tenant rep. You want to kind of go through how that got started. Obviously, you're a property owner developer now. So how did you kind of transition from that tenant rep perspective and then start getting into property ownership? And, what drew you to that?
So the first week I was at the shopping center group, I remember sitting in a cubicle outside of Hugo and Greg's office, and basically was an administrative assistant. I mean, they would just hand me check into cash, deals and GameStop deals and say, hey, plug these, variables into these boilerplate letters of intent and let's go do deals. And I just started a deal volume. I remember doing 66 deals that first year. Golly. With them, and made $24,000, which, for your first year in real estate wasn't bad. And we were just doing huge volume. And, I think I got paid 15% on each deal that I did with each one of them. And I remember we sold a Chili's at Eastwood at the end of that year. And Greg gave me a little bit extra on that deal, which made a huge difference for me. And then Hugo and I sold a service merchandise in Tuscaloosa on Skyland, a beauty mart, who's still there, that same year for DDR. And he paid me a bigger chunk of the commission than I was supposed to get paid. And so those two deals put me at the 24,000, and then made 66 the second year, 102 the next, and over $300,000 the next year. And I started at 22 years old in the business. And so that was a lot of money back then. It still is a lot of money, but as a young, probably 25, 26-year-old, that's a ton of money.
Yeah. Low expenses.
Just we lived on $4,000 a month probably as my wife and I. So
yeah.
So that was really good. From the beginning, Gary Fayroe, he really encouraged me to buy real estate. He had just done his Fresh Market Center on 280 when I started, and kind of hung up his brokerage cleats. And, he encouraged me. At first, I didn't have enough knowledge to do it. I did do my first development deal in 2006. It was supposed to be a Dollar Tree build-to-suit in Pelham, Alabama. Dollar Tree ended up going into the Barber Old Winn-Dixie Center with Gold's Gym. Yeah. And Evan Dejanovic, who's an interesting guy, he somehow got in the middle of the deal and brought us a Napa Precision Tune dual tenant build-to-suit. And so we did that deal. Robert Buckhalter, one of my current partners, came in, and Hugo and I did that deal with Robert. It was way too skinny of a deal for Gary to do. Yeah. He only does fat deals, and Robert's more of a merchant developer and volume guy. And so we did that deal. We flipped it. The Japanese steakhouse I used to eat at in Trussville every Friday night. I lived out there at the time. That guy, Ringo Yam, bought the building from us, and we made $200,000, and I was a 25% owner. So Robert was able to go to Red Mountain Bank, finance the whole deal, put no cash in it. He put all the pursuit capital up. And so I took my $50,000. I think I put it into my SEP IRA. And then 2008 hit, and, it went in half. And then after that, the downturn hit, and luckily I didn't own anything. And we bought a Lowe's from DDR for $600,000 down in Opelika. 11 acres, 70,000 square foot building, and did Tractor Supply, surplus warehouse, and now Roses. It was Save a Lot back then, and did really well. Got $1 million incentive package, and we still own that today. And then Gary, Greg, Hugo, and I bought the old Bruno's on Montclair. Yeah, and that was in 2009, and that really was the start of that was my first big deal, was the storage, and we ended up quadrupling our money on that deal, and I took that money, and we did a TIC structure. So I 1031 out of that. I bought 3 properties, and that gave me what I needed. That was 2015, and that gave me what I needed on a balance sheet and cash flow to start buying my own deals and borrowing money, and that's really when I started getting more full time into acquisitions and development. Yeah, 2015,
and that was. So it was a vacant Bruno's box. Y'all converted it to self-storage. Whose idea was it to kind of go the self-storage route, or who had that expertise? Because I guess at that point was kind of an emerging product to some extent. I know people were doing it, but it wasn't the self-storage sector that we have now, where there's, dedicated groups doing them all over the country. Where did you guys see that opportunity? Or was it, because I know you ended up carving out parcels in the parking lot, knowing that self-storage doesn't need the parking that a grocery center needs. How did that one evolve? Where did it come from?
So several factors were involved there. Hugo and I got involved with the Bruno's disposition work when Bruno's Supermarkets was going through their sell-off, bankruptcies, et cetera. In 2005, C&S Wholesale and Southern Family Markets bought Bruno's, or the majority of them, in their warehouse, and they were shattering a lot of stores, and we were getting the listings on them. And so that store shut down, and we've been tracking all the grocery stores. And I think Martin Smith got that listing. And when I saw it, I was like, we got to jump on this fast. And Gary Fayroe had put the Winn-Dixie and Cava Heights under contract a year or two earlier.
Oh, wow.
And he had the idea to try to do some climate control storage. And the reason he liked the model is because it's like owning an apartment building, but no one complains about the temperature, and you have 2 restrooms in the office. Yeah. And so his idea was, hey, we can bump rents every year or more often. On average, a storage facility bumps rents every 300 days. Yeah. and no one's going to move their crap out but for an extra $10 a month. And we can keep the temp at 75, 80 degrees and keep going. So I believe he didn't get the rezoning he needed on that one. So he killed it. And then Hugo and I used our entity we had to put that Bruno's at East Winter contract for $1.1 million because it was in the downturn, and it was that was a 54,000 square foot building. I believe it was on 6 or 8 acres. I think it's been 6 acres, and we were Alan and I were out marketing it. Yeah, Alan was still at Shopping Center Group, and we were calling on, I remember, Books A Million and all these retail tenants, and at the same time studying the storage, but the storage needed some rezoning in the city of Birmingham. So we start studying that, and it looks like we can get it rezoned, and we did a quick close on it. We knew at $1.1 million, we're fine. So anyway, we get all the zoning worked out, heading down that path with storage, and we started marketing the parking lot because with storage, we needed like 5 or 10 parking spaces. So we had all this extra land. So we pay $1.1 million. We borrowed the money from Southern States Bank, 100%, no cash in the deal, using Gary. I don't know what Greg and Hugo's balance sheets were, but, at that time, I think Gary was the one, had the strongest balance sheet, and I had nothing. And Gary was able, we all signed a guarantee, but with everybody's financials combined and his, probably we borrowed 100% of the money, no cash in the deal. And I'm very thankful to him for letting me participate and other guys for letting me participate I don't know how old I was, but I was young in 2009. I've been in since 2004, probably 27 or so. And I got a 25% ownership stake in that. And really at that point, Dick Schmaltz is a great guy, been in the business a long time. And he brought us a Bojangles deal, and they paid us $755,000 for under an acre of land. And then Taco Bell paid us $600,000 for the middle lot. And that paid off the entire property. And we got the storage quotes done and went to Oakworth and borrowed another, I think, 3.6. No cash in the deal. I think we pulled some cash out at that point, maybe $400,000 tax free, and did that deal, and then and held it. And in 2015, we saw what Hoover Self Storage sold for to excess space. And when we saw that, we were like, we've never thought about selling. Gary didn't want to sell; he's a holder.
Yeah.
But the rest of us were like, man, this is be life changing. But everybody wanted to do something different with their money when they made it, and so we converted to a TIC. So I learned about how to do that, which is very fascinating. I've done it many times now. And I don't know if I need to disclose what we made, but we quadrupled what we had in it. So we all made really good money.
Yeah.
And I was really blessed with my 1031 because I found 3 good properties that some I still own and one that I've 1031 3 times now. And
oh, wow.
It's just been, so I don't know what the original question was, and I rambled on, but
no, that's perfect. Well, that's crazy that from that initial deal, you've now done 3 1031s out of that first deal. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's crazy. I remember that. I remember it because it was a great case study for me learning about development. At that point, you said that was 2015. I'd been in the business for close to 5 years or more. And I knew I was wanting to get into development, and Gary was really great about opening everything up, showing how things were structured. And I actually helped Greg and Gary on their exchange. Helped them buy one property together. It was like a 5 guys AT&T.
Huntsville,
Costco,
yeah.
Costco. Yeah, I think that one. I think they're out of it now.
They bought some land in Madison and.
Yeah, I helped them.
A storage facility in North Carolina, maybe, or something like that.
Yeah, I helped them buy the land in Madison to do a storage deal. I think was the plan. I think he got it rezoned, and it was all replatted. And then I think the Breland Homes guy came and put one up like right next door.
He put a ton of them up in Huntsville.
Yeah, and just kind of saturated the market, and then I think they sold it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's a fascinating deal. I think that's one of the things that, we talked about the young guy we just hired that's straight out of Auburn. Like, you don't learn about structures like that. And it's like, I feel like the development world is just rare combination of sophisticated like finance and accounting guys that have just enough redneckery in them to like figure out kind of how to, put all the pieces together. And
when that deal too, I mean, it's basically a doctorate in real estate. People talk about going to their, I mean, I don't want to knock CCIMs or masters in real estate development. I don't have any of them. I'm sure I could go do it and pass whatever test, but I feel like that deal and a few other deals I've done, brokerage and development, I've gotten a doctorate. I mean, that deal, I learned how to rezone property. I learned how to replat property. I learned how to move storm sewer pipes. I learned how to do declarations, financing, pro formas, draws for banks. I mean, Gary, I did all the legwork, or the majority of the legwork on that project because I had no financial, I couldn't contribute to the financial side of it. But
right.
I was willing to put the hard work in, and I was willing to do the detail work because that's kind of what I do, and worked with the lawyers and negotiated the declarations. And I mean, really that project, I mean, Gary kind of oversaw me doing that stuff, and I learned so much from that project.
Yeah,
that I never knew before.
Yeah, I've always wondered if that's by design for Gary, is he's like wanting to be a teacher, or if it's Gary wants to go to the lake and he just wants to hand it to you so that you could do it. But regardless, the end goal is you get that doctorate.
Really do. Yeah,
and I think although Gary and I never did a deal, we went deep down the rabbit hole on multiple deals. Some of them I'm very thankful he said no to. But yeah, such a great education. And then you and I partnered on a deal in Homewood, and you represented Jack's. There was an opportunity. I brought that old State Farm building on Green Springs Highway. We try to do that. You want to kind of talk through some of the uniqueness there, and then segue into the Palisades deal, which is right up the road.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be over that way today. I'm just interested to see how that fire station's running over there. I still haven't seen the fire station come up, but we did get to deal with the city attorney, and I don't want to speak too much because I don't know what we signed, but that was not a fun experience with him at all. I'm not a big fan, but I don't like government in general. I kind of like the free market, and I mean, if Saban wanted to be a dictator, I could probably get behind that.
Yeah.
But anyway, Ward and I had been trying to do deals for a long time, and he found this State Farm trailer office on this 0.45 acre site. That's what I remember. It's right there at the Publix, Green Springs Highway in Birmingham. A really, I'd say it's the most dense, desirable submarket in Birmingham is the way I would describe it. It's a mixed demographic of African American, Hispanic, white, high income, low income, mid income, and it's right there at I-65 and Oxmoor Road, and then Lakeshore, and it's just really a dynamic corridor. It kind of looks nasty, but it's all the people do well there if they target a mixed demographic. So Ward found that piece. I was looking for Jack's Hamburgers. I don't know if we both knew that, but he found that piece, and the city owned some property to the rear. And so Ward and I put the front under contract, and I think we just went ahead and closed on it.
We did. Well, and if you remember, the city had previously, I think, been under contract with Captain D's.
Yeah, that's right.
So we knew that there was a willingness or a desire to sell the property, and of course, at that time, like every city's like, what can we do to create more tax revenue? So, it was somewhat of a hedged bet. Like, hey, we can take this down, knowing that this should happen, right? They should sell.
We thought the city would basically give us the back because we're going to put a $2 million plus a year revenue generator and kick off whatever 4% tax the city. And so we were like, hey, $80,000 a year plus employment, that's a good deal. And it's sitting there vacant, not generating anything.
It was only like 0.3 of an acre. So it's like that there was nothing they could have done with the property.
So we went to the city. They had a rectangle piece in the back, and we site planted Jack's Hamburgers, I worked with at the time. Now my brother and sister work with them. And so we had Jack's on board, a ground lease number that worked for us. We had the city had agreed to a number. We were working on a contract with their lovely attorney, and the council seemed on board, and then we had to go to the adjacent restaurant property. It was owned by is an old vacant restaurant, and we had to do some land swapping to square up our property.
Yeah.
So we had gotten that worked out, which was complicated.
Yeah, super complicated.
Because he worked as a defense contractor and was rarely available, so we got that worked out.
Yeah, he could only talk after 10 p.m.
Yeah,
so
it's really sketchy. I mean, I don't know, but we got all these pieces worked out, and the access, because the city controlled the road, was going to be fine. Anyway, we got that worked out, and then all of a sudden, the city decides that they want to put a fire station on that property. And it was out of left field, and they have a fire station behind Purple Onion down the road, and it is small.
Right.
And we're like, well, why don't you put a fire station on another property that's not prime real estate? And they're like, we own this. And we're like, this is bizarre. So anyway, they basically, from what I recall, threatened eminent domain if we didn't sell them the property. And so they
offered us a price. I think we had paid $400, and they were like, fine, we'll give you $450. And we were like, right, we're not in this for that doesn't even cover our fees, our carrying costs.
Yeah. So we made a couple hundred maybe, on it, which, we could have made a lot more with the ground lease and flip. But in the end, we were, it's fine. It was just disappointing the way it went down.
Yeah. That one, if you weren't a libertarian at that point, that one probably pushed you over the edge. That one really pissed me off because that was the first deal we had done together.
We called it Green Gold LLC, but it didn't turn into gold.
It did not turn into gold.
But, the city subsequently did what most governments do, and they screwed up the deal and the properties around there by putting in a concrete median, and that's a whole different podcast. But,
right,
I hope I don't need a permit from the city of Homewood anytime soon, because I told those people what I thought about their concrete median project and what a waste it was. And they definitely ruined some property on the Green Springs corridor. But it's beautiful for the bikers and the what do you call them, arborists that are into the flowers in the middle. Yeah. Not good for property owners.
I think that was, I lose my cool a lot, but that was the worst I've ever lost my cool. I think I told the city attorney, where do you want to meet? We're going to settle this. And then I bought the web domain, don'ttakemyproperty.com.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, I still own it, actually. I don't know why. It's probably on some auto pay or whatever. One of the few things I have on auto pay. But that was the next step. If they didn't sell to us at a reasonable rate, because I think our attorney at that point was like, man, we do not want to go down this road. They can take it with eminent domain. It's not going to be a fun process. You're not going to get your money back. That one essentially ended. We made money there, but it wasn't what we thought we were going to make. And I think we both left with the mindset that we were never going to do a deal in Homewood again. And then I didn't. You did. Or is Palisades?
Partly. So Palisades, like so many deals that I've done, almost all of them have come from relationships with brokers.
Yeah.
That particular deal came from Josh Randolph at Collier's.
That's right. Another shopping center group.
Shopping center group. So we had tried to get a hold of that center for years, mainly the corner strip center.
Yeah.
I tried to buy that corner strip center.
That was the old Payless. Mexican restaurant.
And Reynolds Drugs.
Yeah.
Which had been a floor operation. And so anyway, Josh came to me and said, hey, I'm taking the Palisades to market for BB&T Bank. It's been foreclosed on. Do you have interest? And I said, yeah, I got interest. I love that property. It had a vacant Virginia College, which was a 130,000 square foot building.
Yeah.
And so my initial thought was, this is a storage play. It's another storage play. It's 2 stories, parking deck in the back, huge building.
I didn't know there was a deck back there.
Still is. Medicaid was in there. And so anyway, we jumped right on it. Ray Jones and I, Ray's a very close friend. And
another shopping center group.
Partner, shopping center group guy. He's now the head man.
Yeah.
For Alabama.
Yeah, big dog.
And Spencer and I got him to join the shopping center group, and then we left like a month later and started our own gig.
Yeah, he and I came on board right about the same time.
Yeah. So Ray and I had bought an old SunTrust in Muscle Shoals about a year earlier, and were able to get a deal done with Cookout and sold them that property. And at the same time, we bought an old BB&T bank in Eufaula, Alabama, and ground leased it to Jack's. So we sold both of those and had some 1031 money from those. So we rolled those two deals into Palisades. So we got under contract for $8.3 million, I think, and it was or 8.5, and that was in 2019, October 2019, I believe. And then because of the storage component, we decided to bring Gary in on it, and because he kept doing storage facilities and bought into a management company. And so brought him in on that. So we get under contract, I think on a Friday. And on a Monday, Brian Holt calls and says, "Hey, I got a car dealer client that was trying to buy the shopping center and was competing with y'all. And he wants to buy the Virginia College, and he's buying Adamson Ford. And he wants to move the Ford dealership out of downtown. He wants your property." So we ended up, this is public record so I can share it. He ended up paying us $6 million for that property, about 10, 11 acres. And a Virginia College, which at the time was costing $100,000 a year just in property tax.
Yeah.
Plus insurance of a vacant building and maintenance.
How big was the total site?
So total site with that, so right now, I want to say we have 110,000 square feet of space today.
Okay.
And that was 130. But it was the vacant portion.
Right.
And so got rid of that expense. So the neat thing that I learned on that was how to bifurcate the acquisition of the property from a 1031 perspective to avoid taxes. And so we basically took the basis. We knew we were going to sell to him for $6 million. So when we bought the property, we put all our 1031 money on the rest of the shopping center.
Right.
And identified that as our 1031 replacement property.
Right.
And then the Virginia College property, we bought it and didn't identify it in the 1031. And we put a basis on it of $6 million. So we sold to Stivers for $6 million. We had no tax liability.
Yeah.
And so the partners were able to take some of that money that we didn't use to pay down the debt and put it in our pocket tax free. And Gary had 1031 too. I think he had sold to walk-ons in Tuscaloosa, might have been the deal. But so he 1031. So none of us had real cash in the deal.
Was that already parceled out? So it was easy to do, or did you have to reparcel or replat on the front end to separate all that? It
was parceled out, but it required a replat to get some things fixed. But he got the parking deck also in the back.
Okay.
And he ended up building a $20 million plus car dealership there, demoing the building. And he actually came back and leased the space on our end cap next to Enterprise.
Yeah, really?
And we had to tear some of that off and reduce that size so we could get the trucks around that building once he built. We had to put a new truck path in. That was a very complicated deal. We had to get Walmart's consent on change to the REA for that shopping center. We had to get Zaxby's and Dairy Queen to sign off on an amendment to the declaration.
Wow.
REA. So there was a lot of complexity to that deal. We also went to the city of Birmingham and got a $4.2 million sales tax incentive. Half went to Stivers and half went to us.
Wow.
And that was for us to renovate the shopping center, which we just finished back in August. We did a renovation on it. And then a couple months after we bought the Palisades, so we bought it in March of 2020, right in the height of COVID.
Yeah.
So we were able to go back and get a $200,000 price break, which wasn't significant, but we got a little bit off of the purchase price. But right after we closed, we were trying the old Reynolds Drugs down by our little strip center that came with the deal. Green Springs and Oxmoor came available, and we were able to get that under contract and buy it for $925, I believe, and subsequently put Ace Hardware in there.
Yeah.
And that's just been, that little corner strip is just a great piece of property. And so that piece of shopping center has it probably ended up being the best deal that I've ever been involved in.
Which says a lot after the Montclair deal.
And the other great part is that the bank, at the time the rates were still low after we did the Stivers deal. And so we were able to refinance and get, I don't know what our rate is, but it's sub 4%, 10-year locked.
Oh,
and
man.
So that's just huge blessing that doesn't exist today.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
so
that was probably still a pretty good deal for the Stivers guys too. Because I mean, that land is probably worth close to what they paid for it. But how big was the deck? Like how many spaces do you remember?
I don't know. I would guess that deck's got 100 parks in it, and he's out of room. I mean, we lease him another 60 space in our parking lot right now.
Wow. I mean, there's $3 million plus in value just in the deck alone.
Yeah, and then the site was graded.
Yeah,
and the roads are in.
Yeah,
no DOT work, and
yeah,
we also had to get the car wash. The car wash on the corner was using our parking lot for access, but they had no rights to it.
Oh wow!
So we also had to work with them to get their access put back on the Palisades Boulevard or whatever the side road is. So,
yeah.
But that deal is, we've since lost Badcock and American Freight recently through bankruptcies, but that's going to end up being a great thing because their rents were so low.
Yeah.
But, that just goes back to how a relationship with brokers and just being honest in our business is what you have to do to get deals.
Yeah.
Josh there, you on another deal, and every deal seems to come through a broker.
Yeah.
Relationship.
And I feel like that's a big mistake that young guys make is they will screw somebody over like a $15,000 fee or $20,000 fee. And they think it's so important at the time, but that's going to keep them from doing a deal that might make them $3 million 10 years from there.
And even the older people,
Oh yeah.
They're in my position or been in the business longer that are buying real estate. Like, people don't forget, and it's a small world that we work in. And
yeah, really is.
They're not going to bring a deal to you if they can't trust you.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that execution is a big thing. That was one thing Gary taught me early on. It was like, man, don't be one of these guys that puts things under contract, tries it out, and has a mentality of if it works, great. If it doesn't, great. It's like if you go under contract, you have to have the mentality that I'm going to make this work. Especially when you're young, you don't have any money, you have very limited experience. That's the one thing that you can walk into a deal and say, I've put 9 things under contract and I've closed on 8 of them, because that gives that seller and that broker, the feeling that, hey, these guys do what they say and they're going to execute. And ultimately that's what gets us paid. So yeah. All right. That's a great one. We've done 2-ish, 3-ish deals that were great. Not everybody likes to share their mistakes, but I think those are the ones that, we all learn from. So, can you think of a mistake you've made? I know you live a perfect life and you never do anything wrong, but maybe there's a deal there that went worse than Green Springs that you could share.
Yeah. I've been pretty lucky with most of my deals, but I would say, really, my residential deals and my personal houses have been the worst deals I've ever done.
Yeah.
Because I'm such a perfectionist that I renovate them and spend too much money, and then I can't get the money out. But luckily with those, I've used cash to renovate and kept low leverage, which is so important in our business from a personal standpoint. But I would say I had put 2 pieces of land under contract probably in 2022. One in Tuscaloosa on 69 South, 4-acre site near Hillcrest High School in Shelton State, to do a commercial subdivision to be anchored by Aldi Foods, who's a longtime brokerage client of mine. Started working with them in 2004, since when they came into the Alabama market. And so I put that under contract, and I put a piece of land in Pensacola under contract. There was a very complicated rezoning that they didn't want to deal with. And so the Tuscaloosa deal I worked on for a while, and we were getting close on an Aldi lease, and then all of a sudden, Aldi announces that they're buying Winn-Dixie.
Yep.
And wherever there's a Winn-Dixie nearby, they're not going to buy and build. They're going to renovate the Winn-Dixies.
Yeah.
And so both Tuscaloosa, 69 South, and Pensacola had Winn-Dixies nearby. A lot cheaper for them to take those Winn-Dixies, especially if they got to assume a lease, and just cut those down to the size they need and a lot faster and get the stores open. And so I lost those 2 ground leases. I had spent a lot of money dealing with DOT, and just, I always plan to buy a property when I put it under contract. I don't drop many deals unless it's environmental or access. And Tuscaloosa, I kept working on it after they dropped it, and I couldn't make it work. And so I ended up losing about $80,000 on that deal. But I feel like if I would have closed with interest rates having hiked up at that time, I'd still be sitting there today and just couldn't make the money I wanted to. I did end up closing on Pensacola. I had $100,000 invested in that one before I closed, and then 80 in Tuscaloosa. So Pensacola was such a difficult rezoning from a neighborhood residential zoning over to commercial. And I just believed in the site and knew we could make money on it, or knock on wood, we'll make money on it, and closed on that one. Now we have Circle K ground lease signed with a little land left over. But, it's been painful carrying vacant real estate with interest rates.
I've made that mistake.
We bought 6 or 7 vacant banks, land deals, restaurants around Alabama and Florida from 2002, starting in 2022, and then up till January of 2023 was the last vacant piece of real estate I bought. And I've still got it sitting there. And so hopeful that gets done. And I've got leases signed on all the rest of the vacant properties except one, but it's taken a long time.
Yeah.
As you know.
And that's super painful. That was a Gary Farrow or a Jeffrey Bayer rule, I think, through Gary that I violated. Gary would always say, don't buy land without a plan. And, the plan is to make money, but if you don't have a specific plan to execute on, it can get painful. And I did that with that site in Vestavia that, rolling through a pandemic. I also had the Battery 2 project that was a complete debacle. That thing was, I don't know, $9 or $10 a month that was just right out of my pocket and right out of my wife's pocket, which had us pretty skinny there for a while. Fortunately, I think it's worked out. But that was I might have owned that for 3 years. That one was a painful deal. So
yeah, about $7,000 to $15,000 per vacant site, I think, is probably what I spend per month.
Yeah.
And, I think all mine will pay off. I think they will at least get out of them. I think most of them will do really well. And, we've just been in a cycle where in order to get deals, you got to be willing to close and close quick. And I think we had a pretty good idea of what property's worth just from our history being in the business and just buying good property. And I've been buying stuff with buildings on it, but paying the land value.
Right.
And so if the building gets scraped, we're still okay. And of all the properties we bought, every one of them except maybe one will end up being a scrape where the building's not being used and they're just ground leases.
Yeah.
And that goes to the quality of the real estate. These are Chick-fil-A ground lease, Fifth Third Bank, Chase Bank, Bank of America, Harbor Freight, and Circle K. So, that tells you the quality of the property. It's just when you got to find the user, the lease gets signed, you're 9 months typically for their inspection and permitting, 6 months for them to build, then you get a rent check, then you got to market it to sell it if you're going to sell it. Because right now you just can't make sense of holding with the interest rates where they are.
Yeah.
At least my deals don't make sense.
Yeah. No, I think in the last 4 years, within probably 10 to 15%, I don't think I've bought anything that was not a covered land play. Our difference is everything we bought had income. We probably paid below market on the cap, but the incomes helped support it. So my
goal is to take the single tenant deals, make cash off of it, 1031 it into multi-tenant, below market rents, with all the 1031 money, not putting in my own cash, and then replace those rents, fill those vacancies, and build a cash flow machine with multi-tenant and hold those.
Yeah.
But the single tenants don't make enough money to hold.
Right. Well, and you got the risk of, especially the way, and this is probably a whole nother podcast, but the way a lot of corporate structures work these days, they don't care if they're filed bankruptcy and screw over whatever commitment they've made. If it's advantageous to them, they're going to do it. And, there's a lot of real estate guys that are going to get left holding the bag with 100% of their risk in a tenant that, makes a couple bad decisions on a big corporate acquisition, and now all of a sudden they're underwater. Well, what's their solution? It's not let's live up to our obligation. It's let's restructure so that we're in a better spot and we don't care who we screw to get there. So yeah, I get that completely. All right, well, let's go through. You've been in the business for 20 some odd years now. You've seen a lot of ups and downs. You've seen some global pandemics. We're kind of coming out of a big question mark period. I think whether you call it a downturn or not, it's been a rough 18 months in real estate, but there's a lot of optimism. Where do you see the next 12 to 18 months, from a retail perspective, but then also just as a commercial real estate as a whole?
Yeah, I think we've definitely started seeing increase in bankruptcies from retailers. So in the retail world, that's going to create a lot of opportunities as the retailers bankrupt and as people's loans come maturing on shopping centers. And when that's going to happen, people got to refi at a higher interest rate. Now they can't hit their debt coverage ratios, and they don't have the cash in the bank because a lot of developers don't have any money. And all of a sudden, we're going to start seeing foreclosures. I think it'll be a trickle. It's not going to happen at once because it's going to be tied to maturities on the financing. And I think that's where the opportunities are going to be to buy. And so I'm being very conservative right now. Once I sell these vacant pieces of real estate, I'm hoping the timing lines up so we can 1031 into some shopping centers. But I really think spending time with banks right now and their REO teams and special servicers that get the non-recourse debt back, I think it's a great place to people be spending their time. If you've got cash, I think providing equity to conservative deals that other people do. I've been doing some of that, investing in some of our net lease deals that we sell and just recycle that cash and make a return on it. Because I do feel like the real estate values are still overinflated. Even with interest rates going up, I've only seen a 50 to 100 basis point change in the cap rates, whereas the interest rates have gone up, I don't know how many hundreds of basis points. So it's not correlating the
right.
The interest rate change
300%,
300%
plus
basis points, and then the cap rates have moved 50 to 100 basis points.
Right. They should be relatively correlated. If if the deal is based off of a spread, they should be running to some extent in parallel.
Yeah. So there's no way for a deal to work right now unless you have a bunch of 1031 money or you have a trust fund with a bunch of cash, which I don't have. And otherwise you can't. I just don't see how you make deals work. I think people are doing deals that don't make any sense.
Yeah.
I have seen retailers stepping up and paying more rent. And then I think we'll see creative reuse of buildings continue. I saw the Macy's hit the market again at the Galleria. And, it's like if you don't have some type of government or institutional university use, creative reuse, I see no retail demand for a lot of these properties.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll be interesting. I think we talked about this with Jeff Inc. too, is I think it's natural for the retailer, especially the private equity-backed retailers who have to provide returns to their investors. They've got to have growth to provide those returns. They can't have growth without new stores. So it's sit around and hope that a competitor files bankruptcy for making a bad decision, or, hey, we got to pay more in rent. And where we were, 5, 6, 7 years ago, $30 rents, mid-30s in this market, we're kind of the top of the market for new construction. I think everybody's come around to, hey, 40s is not that big a deal anymore. And they're just going to pass it through to the consumer ultimately. But what's going to happen then is you're going to have $40 rents in a market where property right next door's got $20 rents because the lease was done 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and it's locked in. I've got this theory that the worst kind of real estate you could own right now is long-term leases with a bunch of options, because you've lost control and the market has changed so much in the last, 3 years, 4 years, that you're basically stuck in a, really tough growth perspective. You can't do anything. You're on the hook, but you can't find any extra value. You can't do anything with it. So,
yeah, I think with the bankruptcies of these retailers, if you look at it, the ones I've seen are private equity owned, and their target customers are low income, low middle. And those people have been hit so hard with the inflation. They have no money to make their debt payments. A lot of these people, like a Badcock or American Freight, they're financing. Whether it's them holding the paper or a third party. And like with Badcock, Conn's bought them, and then Con sells off all their good debt to get money back, holds the bad paper from what I understand. Those people can't pay the bills anymore. Private equity's probably sucked all their cash out from selling off the good debt to somebody. They don't care. They've gotten their cash in.
Yeah.
And the numbers don't work anymore. So they go belly up.
Yeah, that was a tough, because I own a Badcock as well. I got to know a lot of the Badcock people, and they're awesome people. Like that was
the head of real estate. He's awesome. I forget, Derek.
Derek Taylor.
He is just
awesome guy.
Man.
Yeah, I mean, and I think he had been there for years. Yeah. This is a family-owned company. It's 100-some-odd-year-old company, and man, these guys came in and just pulled the rug out from him, and he had all the reason in the world just to walk away and say, I'm not cleaning this mess up for you. And man, that guy has answered every phone call. Yep. He's responded to every text, and he's apologized to me. And that's, it's rare. I don't think you see that very often anymore in this world. His apology to me is, this is not how Badcock does business, and I'm sorry you're experiencing this. And this is a guy that's going to lose his job over the whole thing.
Yep.
So yeah, and I think that's the whole relational side of commercial real estate. You get, not often, but you do run into very genuine people that you want to help out, you want to do deals with, and you actually enjoy, getting in the trenches with. So, but yeah, well, man, I appreciate it. I think you did great. Really proud of you. This is a big accomplishment to sit down here and talk for an hour or so. But we're appreciative of you sharing all your expertise and wisdom, and we'll send this off to the universities for the doctorate program.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, man.
Thanks for having me.
Yep.
Find out more about Will and his development company at cgrellc.com. Thank you for listening to the Gumption Podcast with Ward Neely. If you are a commercial real estate developer or property owner in need of financing, then we can help you get better loan terms faster. Visit gumption.dev. That's gumption.dev, or email ward@gumption.dev. We look forward to hearing from you. See you next episode.